Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. What's up to everybody out there watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel? It's so good to see y'all today. So happy to be in this new year with you. As we've been saying, it is a new year and the same struggle. We out here fighting for justice, fighting for freedom, fighting for liberation. And to do that, we understand that it's a global struggle. We understand that it is a global fight to liberate the people. And to liberate the people, we got to tell the truth. Right now, everybody who's in the room, make sure you make your presence known. Hit that like button so the algorithms know you're feeling what we're talking about, that you're into the topic. Also, while you're out there, please let me know where you're writing in from. It is almost 7 o'clock on the East Coast here in the United States. I know there's people here from Philly and Jersey and New York and Delaware and all in places, but let me know where you're from, whether it's home or abroad, whether it's on the West Coast, the Midwest, the South, whether you calling from the Middle East, whether you're calling from somewhere in the global South, whether you're calling from the continent of Africa, whether you're watching from Latin America, wherever it is, it's all made up names that they do to divide us. But we're going to bring this thing back together. But I want to know where you are geographically as we tell the truth tonight about what's going on. Right now, we have entered a new phase of Israel-Palestine, specifically around what's happening in Gaza. And on October 7th, the world's attention was fixed. On November 7th, the world was still talking about it. On December 7th, people were talking about it. But now, as we are in January, and now we're in the 90s of days, people ain't talking about it the same way. So it's our job, it's our responsibility to keep the spotlight on Palestine, to keep the spotlight on Gaza, to keep the spotlight on the West Bank, to keep the spotlight on everything going on inside the state of Israel, and to keep that analysis tied to a deeper and broader analysis of what's going on in the world. We can't disconnect Palestine from Haiti. We can't disconnect Haiti from Sudan. We can't disconnect Sudan from Mauritania or from, Colombia. We have to ask these questions and we have to press. So that's what we're doing here tonight. So initially, when I came to talk a couple of days ago about this issue, I was frustrated. I was maybe even outraged. I saw something that really disturbed me. I saw a report in the Times of Israel. The Times of Israel. If y'all don't know the Times of Israel, it calls itself an independent Israeli newspaper. But as you know, in the media, ain't nothing independent, ain't nothing centrist, right? You turn on Fox News, it has a point of view. You turn on MSNBC, it has a point of view. You open up the New York Times, it has a point of view, and so forth and so on. The Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, they all have points of view. So this stuff is never neutral. So I looked on the Times of Israel and I saw this. Israel in talks with Congo and other countries in Gaza voluntary migration plan. There's so many pieces to that we got to talk about, right? The Gaza voluntary migration plan. You see the byline here, or not the byline, but you see the sub here. Senior official says Jerusalem working on post-war resettlement of Palestinians from Strip. Some ministers tout Saudi Arabia as destination for Gazans seeking construction work. And then we see right here, the voluntary resettlement of Palestinians from Gaza is slowly becoming a key official policy of the government, with a senior official saying that Israel has held talks with several countries for their potential absorption. Zman Israel, the Times of Israel's Hebrew sister site, has learned that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition is conducting secret contacts for accepting thousands of immigrants from Gaza with Congo, in addition to other nations. And here's the funky thing. They wasn't the only ones. I don't just go to one source. I don't just analyze one group of people, because that will throw you off, right? So I started looking at the television. I watch Israeli television. I don't know if you all pay attention to Israeli television, but a lot of you have I-24 on your New York cable. A lot of you have I-24 on your local cable. I know you don't want to give them no money, but at the same time, you need to know what's going on. And on I-24, they say Israel in talks with Chad and Rwanda to welcome Palestinians from Gaza. That is the report, right? That was the report. And when we look at what they say here, the principle is to grant a generous financial subsidy to any Palestinian who wishes to leave Gaza, as well as significant aid to the host country. And what they specifically say here is that Israel is in talks with Rwanda and Chad. Rwanda, and so we've heard Congo, we've heard Saudi Arabia, of course, but we've heard Congo, we've now heard Rwanda, and we've heard Chad. And it says, the two African countries have agreed to continue discussions with Israel on this subject, unlike other countries which have refused the very principle of moving the Gazan population. Then this is according to a source, a political official, a senior Israeli official. I want you to understand that newspapers have these sources and they don't tell you who they are. So you don't know if it's a real source, if it's a made up source, if it's a half a source, if it's a lying source. You just know that somebody said something allegedly. That same source indicated that negotiations are underway with Mossad and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And read the quote. Listen to this quote. We must move forward with this solution while paying close attention to international reactions that could interpret it as a forced transfer and not a voluntary migration. This is why we work closely with legal advisors. So they're also floating the idea that there's nothing illegal about this. So what is happening here in Israel? That's what we're going to break down for y'all, man, because this is absolutely ridiculous. I was thinking to myself, okay, if this is happening, it's not the first time that these things have been attempted. There is a population of African asylum seekers, which we'll talk about another day. A population of African asylum seekers, mostly from Eritrea and from Sudan, who are in Israel. And one of the things that Israel did was, one, deny them residency, deny them citizenship. They call them infiltrators rather than refugees, so that they can look as if they are not violating the refugee conventions and the international laws around refugees, and instead acting like these are infiltrators, right? And the infiltrator law, side note, if you're interested, is a law that was created. The Infiltration Act was a law created in the 1950s to prevent Palestinians from returning to their homes. So that's the backdrop for this. I just want y'all to know that. So it wouldn't be crazy that this could be happening, because when those infiltrators, those refugees from Eritrea and from Sudan came, one of the things that Benjamin Netanyahu attempted, in addition to self-deportation, i.e. make the conditions so bad that they leave themselves, is to pay African nations to take them. Netanyahu loves to pay African nations to take people. The Israeli government loves to pay African nations to accept people. Why? Because it takes people they don't want out of their hair. It makes it look as if it's a plan that is democratic and fair and even humanitarian and philanthropic. It makes things seem normal when in fact they are deeply problematic. So I said, okay. And then of course, Rwanda is in a tough situation. And we understand the challenges of the Rwandan government. You should see my interview. I have an interview with a high-ranking member of the Attorney General of Rwanda, where we talk about all sorts of things, from the arrest and false arrest of Paul Rusesabagina to what's happening on the ground with regard to human rights. But Rwanda, we know what's going on. Congo, we know what's going on. A humanitarian crisis going on in Congo. There is economic tension. There are economic contradictions. There's gross exploitation. And it wasn't implausible to me. It wasn't implausible to me that one of these nations would say yes. Now, most nations were saying no. Why? For the same reason that the Arab nations were saying no, the same reason that Egypt was saying no, the same reason that Jordan wasn't willing to take all these Palestinians, the same reason that Syria wasn't. Well, there's multiple reasons why Syria wouldn't, but the point was, we are not going to normalize ethnic cleansing. Yeah, part of it is a capacity issue. I mean, how many Palestinians can be in Jordan? Half of Jordan is Palestinian already since since the Nakba, almost. How many people can the neighboring Arab countries hold? How can Egypt economically sustain more Palestinians given what's going on right now under Abdel Fattah el-Sisi? But there was also an ideological and political reason, and that is we are not going to replicate the Nakba with complicity. We're not going to let y'all come out here and kick out these Palestinians and make it seem like, oh, you can just come into our home. When I interviewed Danny Denon from the Israeli government, when I interviewed a former Israeli general, they've all talked about this. Oh, they can leave whenever they want, but they don't mean through the Eretz crossing. They mean through the Sinai. They're saying if you're Palestinian and you're tired of getting bombed in Gaza, you can leave to Egypt. The problem is they're not going to be allowed back. So the Arab nations said no. And so the African nations who had been reached out to said no as well, according even to the Israeli sources. According even to the Israeli sources. Shout out to Cave Wall Musings. I appreciate the love. I appreciate the donation, man. Y'all are really helping keep this channel going and helping it grow. Same thing to you, Hobby Ish. I appreciate that super sticker. It means so much, Iron Man. You too. I appreciate and love the love that y'all are showing out here today, man. I really appreciate y'all. So what does it mean then for an African nation to accept Palestinian refugees? It means they might be looking out for their own interests. It could mean that they recognize also the legitimate humanitarian cost and of the crisis, right? That is to say, what 2.2 million Palestinians on October 6th in Gaza. And now we've seen tens of thousands killed. More than 8,000 children as of the last count I saw a few days ago. A mother is killed every 2 hours in Gaza right now, according to reports. So I can see why they would want to do that. I'd understand. But guess what? That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. Shout out to Miss Anonymous who says it's close to 30,000. I don't doubt that. Like I said, I've only seen the official numbers. I say tens of thousands. You know, the numbers will probably be close to 30,000. I don't have official numbers, but we know even at 20,000, it was extraordinarily evil. It was a debacle, a moral debacle, even at 10,000. And to see thousands of children killed, it's a crisis. So I was prepared to talk about what it meant for African nations to do this. But then we got some news, not from the Times of Israel. No, not from the Times of Israel, but from other reports from Rwanda, for example, reports from Congo, for example. We got reports from the African nations who were purportedly engaged in this type of negotiation with Israel. And let's see what they say. Rwanda not in talks with Israel on transfer of Palestinians from Gaza. I'm gonna say it again. Rwanda not in talks. Not in talks. This is from a Rwandan newspaper. Some of y'all, I know, y'all don't see Europe on it. Y'all don't see white people on it. Y'all think it's not a legit newspaper. This is the New Times. This is a Rwandan newspaper called the New Times. This is Rwanda's one of Rwanda's national newspapers. And what they say is Rwanda is not in any discussion with Israel on the transfer of Palestinians from Gaza, as alleged by an Israeli news outlets. That is according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. They called it a disinformation alert. A disinformation alert, not a wrong information alert, not a misinformation alert, but a disinformation alert. This is important. The ministry indicated that the government of Rwanda noted the disinformation published by Zaman Israel, that is the sister publication of the Times of Israel, an Israeli news outlet, that alleged talks between Rwanda and Israel on the transfer of Palestinians from Gaza. They say, this is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This ain't from Marc Lamont Hill. This ain't from Palestine. This ain't from Gaza. This ain't from South Africa. This is from Rwanda. They say this is completely false. No such discussion has taken place either now or in the past, and the disinformation should be ignored. Notice this again. They said no such discussion has taken place either now or in the past. That's an important point to make. Why? Because you don't want them later on to say, well, they probably had discussions and they broke down. You know, like in sports, when teams attempt to trade and they have trade talks and then it don't work out and they're like, we never tried to trade you, son. Because, you know, you still got the player. You don't want to walk around people thinking they were getting traded if they don't get traded. It's one thing if they do. It's another thing if they don't. But this ain't it. Rwanda very clearly said, we haven't even had the conversation. Nia, oh my God, thank you for that kind comment and generous donation. I appreciate you, Nia. They said, we've never had the conversation. Rwanda said, we weren't negotiating anything. What are you talking about? There was no negotiation. You say, okay, well, maybe they got it wrong. Maybe that was a different African nation. Maybe they just can't tell African nations apart. Well, let's look at Congo. Congo denies talks with Israel to welcome Palestinian migrants. Again, they're not just saying we don't have a deal. They're not just saying we're not close. They're saying they made it up. It is not true. It has never been true. Hit the like button if you understand that this is disinformation. If you understand that this is disinformation, hit the like button. Because this is wild. Now you got two nations, not one, but two nations saying this is not true. This is straight from Kigali. And I'm going to give you Patrick Muyaya. And for those who don't know, Patrick Muyaya is a Congolese government spokesperson. Patrick Muyaya said, there has never been any form of negotiation, discussion, or initiative between Kinshasa, of course, you know, that's like saying from DC, and the Israeli state on the alleged reception of Palestinian migrants on Congolese soil. Wow. Read that again. Never been any form of negotiation, discussion, or initiative between Rwanda and Israel on the alleged reception of Palestinian migrants on Congolese soil. That's according to their report. It's getting wild, y'all. So the African nations, forgive me for saying, yeah, I should say the Congo, not Congo. Forgive me. Yes, thank you for that correction. I appreciate that correction, Lisa. Thank you so much. I appreciate I always appreciate these corrections, man. We got to get this right, especially when it comes to our own homeland, our own people. All right. So thank you for that, my sister. So help me understand this, y'all. The allegation was that Israel was in negotiations to resettle Palestinians in Africa. Voluntary migration, and that they were taking great pains to make sure that people knew that it was voluntary so they wouldn't look like they were kicking people out. Oh, that sounds so good. That sounds like some serious statecraft there. Now, let me be very clear, because some of y'all are like, oh my God, I can't believe Israel did that. Well, you should. Israel does that. The United States does that. The UK does that. France does that. Germany does that. And our African nations do that. Our Latin American nations do that. Our Caribbean nations do that. Now, the West nations, the conceptual West does it way bigger and way more broadly. The violence and the lies and all of it that comes from, you know, the Western bloc is something else. So I'm not saying apples to apples. But nation states lie, governments lie. That's what they do. Politicians lie. That's what they do. I can't tell you that I've had some knockdown dragouts with the Rwandan government. Look at my engagement with the Rwandan government over Paul Rusesabagina, just as one example. But this type of lie is so deep and so transparent. I'm gonna break this down, then I'm gonna leave y'all alone. I'm gonna break this down and I'm gonna leave y'all alone. Thank you, Frank, for gifting a membership, y'all. We love that. So hopefully someone scoops up that membership so they can become part of MLH fam. We appreciate you. We love you. Nia, again, thank you for the shout out. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the generosity. Y'all. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. So why would this be happening? Why would this be happening? Well, here's the first thing. In politics and in political media, there's something called a test balloon. Politicians like to, and administrations in particular, like to float an idea. They like to say something is happening anonymously and see how the public takes it. So when Israel floats the idea that African nations are going to receive them and get money, the idea is Congo and Rwanda, like, we are, but Congo and Rwanda also have the opportunity to say, you know what, we will do that. And if Congo and Rwanda and Chad and whomever else want that kind of deal, then they'll stay silent and they'll contact Israel. Because to do that is to play ball, right? And the African nations could want to play ball, or Saudi Arabia may want to play ball. So it's a test balloon in that way. It's also a humanitarian test balloon. Will humanitarian organizations, will human rights organizations be okay with this? How will this be received in the popular humanitarian circles? Also, how will the general public receive this test balloon? How will Palestinians receive this test balloon, right? Because what they're doing in the media is floating the idea that, oh yeah, going to Palestine could make sense, but going to Rwanda or Congo or Chad makes even more sense. And so let's see what happens. So that's part of why they do it. The other reason why they do this is to make resettlement a foregone conclusion. Well, let me back up. It's to normalize this idea and language of resettlement. They want you to believe that Palestinians who leave Gaza and go somewhere else are simply resettling. Resettling sounds cool, right? You know, we settled here and then we settled somewhere else, right? We went somewhere better. We got greener pastures. Palestinians don't want to go anywhere else. They want their homeland. Many of the people living in Gaza right now were already kicked out of what is now Israel in 1948. And so they were forced into places like Khan Yunis. They were forced into places like Mukhayyam Jabalia, like Jabalia refugee camp. They were forced into these places and they still continue to live as refugees. They continue to struggle as refugees. And so now they're doing the same thing again. They took them from the north, they bombed them to the south, they're pushing them toward the border of Egypt, and then they're saying, well, you know, if you don't like it here, you can always resettle. And then they have the popular media and the talking heads and all the paid liars to go out and say, well, why aren't the Arab nations taking them? As if it's a moral failure of Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon and Syria to not take Palestinians when it is Israel that is bombing them and kicking them out of their homes. And there's the Arab nations that are saying, we're not going to replicate 1948. We're not going to reenact the Nakba by taking other people again and not forcing Israel to meet its responsibility as an occupying nation, to meet its responsibility as a modern democratic nation. Isn't that what they say they are? If you're modern and you're democratic and you're civilized, then you can't kick people out and you damn sure can't transfer people. See, this is the fundamental point. Transfer of people is a form of genocide. Read the Genocide Convention, particularly children, right? Transferring children is genocide. Transferring people during a war, and they're calling this a war, right? It's a war on Hamas. If it's a war on Hamas, then You can't transfer populations during a war. I can't win the war and take your land. That's a war crime. I can't win the war and force people out to live somewhere else permanently. That's a war crime. I can't win a war and kill civilians and innocent people. That's a war crime. I can't win a war or prosecute a war and blow up mosques and churches and cultural sites and schools and hospitals. That's a war crime. And so these war crimes are being witnessed by the world. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Some of them have been hidden through lies, right? Oh, well, the El Shifa and El Ahli Hospital are command centers for Hamas. Therefore, we have to blow them up to cover up the war crime. Oh, there are no Palestinian innocents. So when you kill a 16-year-old boy, you say, oh, well, he might have been part of Hamas, to hide the war crime. And now the transfer of people is being hidden. The transfer of people, thank you, Hobbyish. The transfer of people is being hidden by making it seem like people are just going to resettle. So you normalize the language of resettlement because the resettlement sounds better than ethnic cleansing. It sounds better than depopulation. It sounds better than genocide. It sounds palatable. Thank you, Habish. Also, thank you, Dr. Daniel LaRoche. I'm so grateful, so grateful. And so part of why they tell this story is so that even if the people don't end up in Africa, the idea of resettlement becomes normalized in the minds of the people. Oh, yeah, they're just resettling. Wherever they go, they just resettle. Israel's not kicking them out. They're resettling. But there's another piece here. There's another piece here. Shout out to Alex Glanz. Thank you. You're right. I am frustrated. Righteous anger is what we all need, yo. I'm frustrated by this. The other piece of this is they want to make it seem like Palestinians not returning is a foregone conclusion, a fait accompli, right? This idea that, oh, well, 2.2 million people were in Gaza on October 6th, but right now on January 6th, right? Because October 6th, the day before the quote unquote war started, and now January 6th, 3 months later, not only are tens of thousands of people dead, but 1.7 million of the 2.1, 2.2 million people living in Gaza, 1.7 million of the 2.1, 2.2 million people living in Gaza are homeless. They're unhoused. They're dispossessed of a place to go. So the idea is, if we bomb Israel, if we bomb Gaza, I'm speaking as Israel now. If Israel's position is if we bomb Gaza, as they've said, they're going to bomb it back 3 generations. If we destroy the homes, if they have nowhere to go, if we rip up their civilian infrastructure, if we tear down the mosques and the hospitals and the schools and the churches, if we tear down everything that makes Palestine, everything that makes Palestine, then maybe they'll just leave. And then we can finally get the real one-state solution, because that's what we're seeing here. There's no room for a 2-state solution anymore. There's a one-state reality. There's Israel. There's the West Bank, which has been occupied since 1967, the largest or longest military occupation in modern history. And then there's Gaza, over which Israel has exercised effective control from the moment they left in 2006. So Israel controls everything. It's a one-state reality, which is what makes it apartheid. Because everybody ain't got the same laws. Everybody ain't got the same rules. Everybody ain't got the same policies. Everybody ain't got the same procedures. So if that's the case, then the transfer of people becomes another piece of that. Just like settlement expansion in the West Bank becomes another piece of that. So these lies are not harmless. Basil Tiffany says, how does Biden sell the idea our democracy faces an existential threat in 2024, yet he's enabling a genocide? I mean, there's a huge contradiction there. And Biden is enabling the genocide through weapons, through money, and through political support. And so the next interesting move will be, Basil, to see how the United States responds to claims that other nations may take these Palestinians. Because even if these claims are refuted, Rico BK21, I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you, family. Thank you, family. Thank you, family. Even if these claims are refuted, the question still becomes, are they going to continue to say, well, you know, resettlement might not be the worst thing? Because there is no two-state solution. There is no final status that gives people equal rights, because Palestine has been occupied, because settlements are expanded, because Israel has lived and really said it quite clearly at this point and unabashedly that they are a one-state reality. So it is important that we refute these false reports, these false narratives. But it is also important that we break down why these false narratives exist. In other words, we got to tell people, look, ain't nobody taking Palestinians in Africa. We also need to encourage that narrative to expand, that it's not going to happen, so that other nations don't try to make it happen, because they will eventually catch someone who is vulnerable, someone who needs it, because the West exploits Africa. They extract from Africa. They underdevelop Africa. And then they place Africa, and I'm speaking Africa in broad terms. Certain sub-Saharan Africa gets a certain kind of treatment. West Africa gets a certain kind of treatment. North Africa gets a very different treatment. I'm not trying to paint Africa as a monolith, but my point is the global South. Take Africa off the table for a second. The entire global South gets exploited, and then when you're exploited and underdeveloped and drained of resources, sometimes you make decisions you otherwise wouldn't make. So we have to break this down, but also set an ethical and political standard that says not only do we have to spotlight the fact that it's not happening, the resettlement in Africa, but also that it shouldn't happen, that it can't happen. But we also have to take it another layer, as I did today, and break down why they want you to think that it is happening. Because those stories, those lies are the ones, those are the ones that will allow the Israeli occupation to grow and sustain itself. It allows the apartheid state to grow or at least sustain itself. We have to fight the other way by putting a spotlight on this. So, y'all, I know y'all were mad when you thought Africa was taking these refugees. We got to be just as mad that they lied about it. And that's the truth. Anyway, we'll talk more later, y'all. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. If you appreciate this kind of conversation, hit the like button. Again, let the algorithms know that you're feeling what I'm talking about. That is so important. It's more important than I can tell y'all. Let the algorithms know that y'all feeling what we doing out here. I appreciate everybody that made a donation. Feel free to continue making those donations through gifting memberships, by joining the channel yourself. I'd love for somebody tonight to join the channel as a platinum member, to join the channel as a diamond member. But if you can't do that, join as a bronze or silver or gold member. I just love seeing people join the channel. At the very least, hit the subscribe button so people know, and so that you know what's going on the channel. In particular, hit that little bell next to the subscribe button so you get updates whenever we're doing stuff here. To get hit that join button if you are so inclined. And as y'all see there, the Cash App donation is MLHTV. If you want to send money directly to the channel, send money directly to the platform without anybody else taking stuff out. YouTube won't take its cut if you go straight to the Cash App. That allows us to grow the channel, expand the channel, build the channel, add more voices. People like Mumia Abu-Jamal. If you haven't checked it out, the Classroom and the Cell is called. I'm gonna say it again, the Classroom and the Cell. Me and Mumia Abu-Jamal, political prisoner, public intellectual, humanitarian, scholar. He and I have a podcast on this channel. So go to MLH Official, go to Marc Lamont Hill Official channel where we are right now, and check out all the new stuff that's up. Check out the Mumia podcast. It's 7 or 8 episodes up right at this moment. 7, at least 8. It will be published, I think, tomorrow. Also, on the channel, check out 5 myths about Israel and Palestine. If you haven't seen that and you're learning about this topic, go to the 5 myths about Israel and Palestine. I break down what the myths are. They help you expand your understanding, but they also allow you to fight it out and duke it out and debate with people who have either wrong information, misinformation, or disinformation, as we talked about tonight. We got to fight that husband too. And that's it, family. That's what it is, man. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all later.